On Friday, June 12, 2026, at exactly 5:21 p.m. Eastern Time, a letter arrived at Anthropic's headquarters in San Francisco. It came from the United States Department of Commerce. The letter was short. It cited national security authorities, and it contained a single, devastating instruction. Suspend all access to your two most powerful AI models, Fable 5 and Mythos 5, for any foreign national anywhere in the world, including your own employees. Within hours, both models went dark, globally. Not just for users in China or Russia or Iran, for everyone. Developers in London who had upgraded their API plans that very morning, researchers in Bangalore who were mid-experiment, even foreign-born engineers working inside Anthropic's own San Francisco office were suddenly locked out of the systems they helped build. This is not the plot of a cyberpunk novel. This is what happened last night. And it represents something far bigger than one company's compliance with one government order. This is the moment artificial intelligence crossed a line that it can never cross back over. This is the moment AI became a weapon. I want to walk you through what actually happened. Not the headlines, not the hot takes, but the sequence of events, the technology behind the decision, and what this means for every AI model that will ever be built from this point forward. Because the precedent set on June 12, 2026 will echo for decades. Let's start with what Fable 5 and Mythos 5 actually are, because you can't understand the shutdown without understanding what these models can do. Earlier this week, Anthropic launched two new models built on what they call Mythos-class architecture. This is a tier above anything they've released before, above Claude Opus, above Sonnet, above everything in the current lineup. The model family is called Mythos, and Anthropic made an unprecedented decision. They would release it in two versions. Version 1 is Fable 5. This is the public version. Anthropic describes it as a Mythos-class model they've, quote, made safe for general use. The safety measures are extensive. Layers of constitutional AI training, refusal mechanisms, content filters, the works. Fable 5 was made available to anyone with an API key. Developers, researchers, businesses, individuals. Pay your subscription, get access to the most powerful publicly available AI model ever built. Version 2 is Mythos 5. Same underlying architecture, same base capabilities, but with one critical difference. The safeguards are lifted. Mythos 5 was not designed for general use. It was built specifically for the United States government and authorized cyber defenders. Anthropic publicly stated that Mythos 5 has the strongest cybersecurity capabilities of any model they have ever evaluated. And here's the key phrase from their own system card. Quote, "The frontier cybersecurity and research biology capabilities of Mythos-class models mean that they pose a substantial risk of uplift." Let me translate that. Risk of uplift means the model can significantly increase the capabilities of someone trying to do harm. A mediocre hacker with access to Mythos 5 becomes a serious threat. A biology student with bad intentions suddenly has a research assistant that understands protein folding, drug interactions, and pathogen design. Anthropic knew this. That's why they built two versions. The dual release strategy was itself an acknowledgement. We have created something too powerful to release to everyone. We need a restricted version for the government and a sanitized version for the public. This was already controversial when it was announced. Critics asked, if the model is truly dangerous, why release any version of it? If Fable 5 is the same architecture with just the safety layers bolted on, what happens when someone figures out how to strip those layers off? That question turned out to be prophetic, because that is exactly what the government says happened. Here's what we know about the jailbreak claim. The letter from the Commerce Department, according to Anthropic's public statement, did not provide specific details of its national security concern. That's worth pausing on. The government ordered the shutdown of a commercial product affecting users worldwide, and it didn't explain why. Not to the company, not to the public. Anthropic's understanding, based on what they've been able to piece together, is that the government believes it has become aware of a method of bypassing or jailbreaking Fable 5. In other words, someone, we don't know who, may have found a way to strip Fable 5 of its safety mechanisms and access the unrestricted Mythos-level capabilities underneath. If true, the implications are severe. Fable 5 was supposed to be the safe version, the version where all the offensive cyber capabilities, all the dual-use biology knowledge, all the dangerous emergent behaviors were locked behind safety measures. If those measures can be bypassed, then Fable 5 is not a safe public model. It's Mythos 5 with a broken lock. Now here's where it gets interesting. Anthropic disputes the finding. Their official statement says, and I'm quoting directly, "We disagree that the finding of a narrow potential jailbreak should be cause for recalling a commercial model deployed to millions of users." They call the situation a misunderstanding and say they are working expeditiously to restore access. Think about what that means. One of the most safety-conscious AI companies in the world, a company built on the principle of responsible deployment, is publicly pushing back against a national security directive. They're essentially saying, whatever you found, it's not serious enough to justify what you're doing. This is not a company trying to dodge regulation. This is a company that built an entire second version of their model specifically because they took the danger seriously. And they still think the government overreacted. So who's right? We don't know. And that's part of what makes this so significant. The decision was made in secret, based on evidence that hasn't been shared, with consequences that are global in scale. Now let me explain the legal mechanism being used here, because this is where the real precedent gets set. The order came through the Export Administration Regulations, or EAR. The same legal framework used to control the export of missiles, nuclear technology, advanced semiconductors, and encryption software. Under EAR, the Commerce Department maintains a list of controlled items. If your technology is on that list, you cannot export it to certain countries or certain people without a license. And critically, under what's called the deemed export rule, sharing controlled technology with a foreign national inside the United States counts as an export. This is why foreign Anthropic employees lost access, not because they're in another country, because they're not US persons, and the technology they work on is now considered sensitive enough that even showing it to them inside their own office is classified as an export requiring a license. AI models have never been on the Commerce Control List. Not until now. This is the first time in history that a commercial AI model, not a military system, not a classified project, but a product you could subscribe to with a credit card, has been subjected to export controls designed for weapons. The parallel everyone is drawing is to encryption. In the 1990s, the US government classified strong encryption as a munition. You couldn't export software with strong encryption without a license. The crypto wars lasted years. Eventually, the government backed down. Encryption was too fundamental to the internet's function to be controlled. But the fight defined a generation of technology policy. We appear to be at the beginning of the AI equivalent, and the stakes are much higher. Encryption protects data. AI models like Mythos 5 can find zero-day vulnerabilities in software, design novel biological compounds, analyze classified satellite imagery. The capabilities are more directly weaponizable. The government is not going to back down as easily as it did with encryption. Now let's talk about what this means for the rest of the world. Because the reaction has been immediate and it has been sharp. European policymakers are already using this as evidence for what they've been saying for years. Europe needs technological sovereignty. If the United States can shut down access to the most powerful AI models with a single letter, then any country, any company, any researcher that depends on American AI is fundamentally vulnerable. Think about it. A European startup building on top of Fable 5 woke up Saturday morning to find their entire product stack was gone. Not deprecated, not replaced, gone. No warning, no transition period, no alternative. Just an HTTP error where the most powerful AI in the world used to be. India's tech media covered it as a wake-up call. The Economic Times headline was blunt. NDTV carried it as international news. The message across the developing world is unmistakable. The frontier of artificial intelligence is controlled by one country, and that country can turn it off whenever it wants. This is going to accelerate AI development everywhere else. China is already racing to close the gap. Europe will pour more money into homegrown alternatives. India, Japan, South Korea, the UAE, Every nation that has the resources will now treat AI sovereignty the same way they treat energy independence or military self-sufficiency. Not as a nice-to-have, as an existential requirement. And here's the irony that I can't stop thinking about. Anthropic was the responsible one. They were the company that talked constantly about safety, that delayed releases to run more tests, that built the dual version system specifically because they recognized the danger. And they're the company that got shut down. OpenAI continues to operate, Google DeepMind continues to operate, Meta releases models openly. But Anthropic, the company that went furthest in acknowledging the risks, is the one the government came for. What lesson do you think the other AI labs are drawing from this? If being transparent about your model's capabilities gets you hit with export controls, the rational response is to be less transparent. If building a special government-only version signals that your public version might also be dangerous, the rational response is to not build the special version, to not acknowledge the dual-use potential, to keep your head down. This is the perverse incentive the government just created. The safest AI company got punished. The less cautious ones are watching. So where does this go from here? I see three possible paths. Path 1. The government and Anthropic reach an agreement quickly. The jailbreak is patched or found to be less serious than feared. Fable 5 comes back online for American users first, then gradually for allied nations under a new licensing framework. The models return, but with permanent restrictions, foreign access is never fully restored. Path 2. The shutdown holds. Fable 5 and Mythos-5 remain offline. The export control classification becomes permanent precedent. From now on, every frontier AI model from every company faces the same scrutiny. The Commerce Department builds an AI licensing regime modeled on semiconductor export controls. The era of freely available frontier AI is over. Path 3. This accelerates a global fragmentation of AI. The United States locks down its models, China builds its own, Europe builds its own, India builds its own. The world splits into AI spheres of influence, each with different capabilities, different safety standards, and different values embedded in their models. I think we're heading towards some combination of paths 2 and 3. The genie is not going back in the bottle. The government has tasted this power, the ability to shut down a model with a letter, and it will not give it up. But the rest of the world will not accept dependency on a technology that can be revoked at any moment. What happened on Friday night was a turning point. Not because of the specific jailbreak, whatever it was, not because of the specific models involved, but because the United States government has now demonstrated in the clearest possible terms that it views artificial intelligence as a strategic military asset subject to the same controls as nuclear technology and advanced weapons systems. And once you classify something as a weapon, you don't unclassify it. You don't walk that back. You don't say, never mind, it's just software. The classification sticks, the controls expand, the precedent hardens into policy. Anthropic called it a misunderstanding. I hope they're right. But even if they resolve this specific dispute, the category has been created. Artificial intelligence is now officially a controlled national security technology, and that changes everything. This is Deep Context. I'll see you in the next one.